Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Lesson 2, Science of Narrators. Science of Narrators, علم الرجال. So now, in this, again, repetition. So this is the methodology that because there are no exams, they keep repeating the information. They khalas, khalas, and no one forget it. Toba, toba, bas khalas, enough. Too much repetition. So that was the methodology because there's no exam. You have to taste it, get the bitterness of the repetition. I know sometimes the repetition could be really annoying and sometimes it's beneficial. So in this session, we are going to talk about importance of this science, and we'll start talking about the Soghra. Remember, this course is divided into two, Soghra, Cobra, specific, general. So we are going to, in this lesson, we are going to start talking about the Soghras, the books of the index, narrators. Okay, so part one, the biography of the narrator, Asma Fahrast, which is Soghra. And we are going to also discuss the history of Ilm al-Rijal, the science of Rijal. The slide is moving. Next slide is...
Is the slide a living thing?
It's not moving?
No, it's moving, Sheikh. Don't worry.
Okay, perfect. Because sometimes the slide gets jammed. So okay. So now, importance of this science. Again, very basic information. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, Imam Ali ﷺ said that hadith, there are hadith, they are not authentic. There are hadith fabricated, fabricators have fabricated us. So we need to know that, and we need to know the knowledge. And knowledge cannot be based on, fatwa cannot be based on probability. So therefore, we need to know who is he and how is he. So based on what was mentioned previously, the importance of this science is understandable, which is to verify the authentication of a hadith. Okay? Which is to verify the authentication of the hadith, which will lead us to deduce the proper ruling, verdict, or an Islamic knowledge, not necessarily fatwa. You are a researcher, you are doing a tafsir project or a dua project, and you want to find out this dua, what is its base. Like many people, they ask about Ziyarat Ashura, dua tawassul. So as a curiosity, you'd like to know the base of these du'as or these hadith. So it's a nice science to give somebody a satisfaction, which leads to deduce the proper ruling, verdict, or any Islamic knowledge, okay, which relies on hadith, even the explanation or the interpretation of the verses of the Quran. Because we have that also. Whoever does tafsir of the ayah without knowledge should choose his place in hellfire. So you can't give tafsir based on opinion. You have to have what they say, the knowledge. And if there is a hadith, you can say this ayat has this probable meaning, but you can't say it is the meaning unless if you know that that hadith is authentic and narrated by authentic narrators. So now we have, yes, by this science, the whole process of ijtihad or deduction or any Islamic concept can become accurate because you're verifying the hadith, okay? You're gaining knowledge. Okay, now this is the connection between the mujtahid gives fatwa, and then how does he give fatwa? This is very nice. Just focus with me, it's easy. So mujtahid is giving fatwa, fiqh. From where did this fatwa come? We use ilm al-usul in the content, okay? So ilm al-usul we use for the content. Then the hadith. The hadith, we use the title. The hadith was sahih. How did you know the hadith was sahih? by the ilm al-rijal. So basically it all starts, the whole ijtihad starts from ilm al-rijal. The whole ijtihad starts from ilm al-rijal. Ilm al-rijal tells you this narrator is trustworthy. The narrators are all trustworthy. They're imami. This is ilm al-rijal's duty. Then comes ilm al-hadith. Ilm al-hadith tells you hadith is sahih. Then comes ilm al-usul. Ilm al-usul tells you hadith is sahih hadith. You must rely on it. It's a hujjah. If you don't rely on it, then you are going to be held accountable. If a sahih hadith tell you this is haram, you have to stay away. You see how these are connected? So then from, if the hadith is sahih, then the mujtahid deduces the fatwa. So this is how it happens that the mujtahid, this is a process. Ilm al-rijal, number one. Then ilm al-hadith, number two. Then ilm al-usul, number three. Then ilm al-fiqh, which is ijtihad. So it all starts from this knowledge. Why did I tell you this knowledge, this ilm al-rijal is very important? Because it all starts from here. It all, the process of mujtahid starts from ilm al-rijal. From ilm al-rijal, he will look at the kubras and sughras and then conclude that this narrator is thiqah, trustworthy, or the narrators in the hadith link are trustworthy. Then he will take the ilm al-hadith, titles. Remember, ilm al-hadith give us titles. Hadith sahih. Okay, then he will give ilm al-usul will tell this is hujjah. Now let's say other example I'll take. Mujtahid finds someone is unknown in the link. In ilm al-rijal, he couldn't find anything about him. So this hadith, ilm al-hadith comes and tells them, ilm al-rijal said, sorry, we don't have any information about him. Ilm al-hadith will come and say, okay, sorry, we are going to title this hadith da'if. Can we rely on it or not? Ilm al-usul will tell me, no, you can't rely because there's missing link. It gives you doubt, not knowledge. You see, the mujtahid will leave it, or if it's a mustahab thing, he will tell you to do it based on the raja al-maqlubiyya, hope of its requirement. So these all knowledges are connected. So we did ilm al-hadith. We are doing ilm al-rijal. Inshallah, next course is going to be ilm usul al-fiqh. And after that, we are going to take ilm usul ilm al-tafsir. So in 1 year, I'm planning to give these 5 usuls. Okay, these 5 usuls are very important. And hopefully, if you have time and you summer on this, you can go to our website, Al-Qa'im Institute, and we have all these usuls, except for usul al-tafsir, I have modified the course. So the new modification has not been uploaded yet, and inshallah, we are going to give this online, and we are going to also, basically I'll start with the usul al-tafsir, because ilm usul al-fiqh is already uploaded in our website. So this slide tells us through ilm al-rijal, we define the identity and the status of the narrator in the link of the hadith. Through ilm al-hadith, we define the type of the hadith based on the link or the sanad of it. Through ilm usul al-fiqh, we define the value of the hadith. Is it proof or not? This week, the link, the weak narrator, does it give me knowledge or not? Is it hujjah or not? Is it proof or not? And then through ilm al-fiqh, after studying the text matan, we derive the ruling or an Islamic concept. This shows the relation and the interaction of ilm al-rijal with all the other sciences. Look how base, it's a base for anything which is going to be depending on the hadith. We mentioned in ilm al-rijal, we study 2 things. Who and we study 2 things, sughra and kubra. Sughra and kubra. So we study biography, which is sughra, asma or fahrast, and we study the principles, which is the kubra, general. Can somebody, okay. So now we come to the what? Sughra, the biographies. Now we are going to talk about the biographies. Let me see, somebody is asking. Ilm usul al-fiqh course, the same ilm usul? Yes, ilm al-usul. Like Rejaal, it's initially it's called ilm usul al-rijal, okay? But we call ilm al-rijal. So ilm usul al-fiqh, we call ilm al-usul. So and ilm al-usul is the backbone of the hawza. until the grave. Mujtahid keeps studying ilm al-usul and doing researches. So ilm al-usul is something which is the logic of the jurisprudence, the logical methodology used to understand the text. That is the importance of ilm al-usul, the logical methodology. Okay. So basically, we have Sughra and Kubra. Okay, so now we are going to study the Sughra, the biography of the narrator, Sughra. Again, repetition. Basically, this was the root science. Before, after the times of our Imams, they did not have principles. Why? Because they did not need principles. Everything was clear. I lived with that narrator. That narrator is trustworthy. Okay, so the narrators were known. Either they were the first person narrators, or they had the first person knowledge about the narrator, or they had the second person knowledge about the narrators, like testimony and witnesses. But then after Sheikh Tusi's time, more ijtihad started to happen because the time became far away. So therefore, in that time, they did not need principles. Okay, because they rarely had doubts about the narrators, because it was all floating. Oh, Fulan, Najashi, Sheikh Tusi, Zurara, this and that, and the names were all there, and they all knew these names either directly or indirectly. So basically, Ilm al-Rijal at that time was all mostly about biographies. Now there are few ulamas, they wrote some concepts of whenever you have doubt, you use this principle, but there were very few, and they were embedded in the, like for example, the biology. Before, it was composed of zoology, chemistry. Now they have zoology degree, different zoology and botany. Biology is plant and animal, zoology and botany. So when I started studying university, they had separated it. So I had a choice, choose plant or animal. So I chose animal. So zoology and botany. So I'm a zoologist. I have a degree of zoology and chemistry. Okay, bachelor degree. So it's separated. Now further, zoology is being separated more and more. So now we have a separate science of genealogy, genetic science, and this and that. They're going all in. So before, it was all ilm rijal al-hadith. Principles were inside. Then these got separated. So similar to when a scientist concludes that every metal expands with heat, after heating different metals such as iron, copper, derived from the specifics, comes to conclusion of kubra, or a general rule. Therefore, the usul or principles of Rejaal were derived by a comparative study of all the narrators in the biography, in the books of biographies of the narrators, or encyclopedia of the narrators. Now, this is something, let me explain what I meant last. Whenever you derive a general rule, you look again at the specifics. So general rules basically are conclusion from comparing the specifics. Like for example, in Arabic language, it is said the rule is past tense, like he ate, he hit, he wrote, ends with a sound. Kataba, qala, daraba, okay? So they concluded the rule, past tense is fixed with a fatha at the end. That's a grammatical rule. From where did this grammatical rule came? There were no grammatical rules in Arabs. The grammatical rules, they came from the language of the Arab. They started comparing, okay, and they started concluding, comparison and conclusion. So compare, conclude, compare, conclude. These are all similar. All the present tense in Arabic language, they end with a sound at the end. Okay, then the rule, every present tense should be fixed with a fatha at the end. Punkt. Okay, so this is how the rules are derived. So before, we did not have principles of Rijal, the Kubra. The Kubra were derived. They started comparing the narrators. They started comparing the methodology of scholars of the narrator. They saw that there are a lot of common things. They took these common things and they made these principles. Okay? So therefore, the usul or principles of Rijal were derived by comparative study of all the narrators in the books of biography of the narrators of encyclopedia, the narrators, okay, of encyclopedia, of the narrator's biography. So they saw what are common things. But as mentioned in hadith, signs that in hadith signs, that the first person who categorized the narrators into four categories was Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. So Imam Ali was the first person who said that narrators are either hypocrite, either somebody who makes an error, but it is unintentional, and he doesn't know that he has made error, or a narrator who's not aware that the narration has been rejected, finished, abrogated. Another hadith came and previous hadith was abrogated. And then the fourth type of narrator is an accurate, pious, trusted. So out of four narrations, one narrator. So out of four types of narrator, one type of narrator is only reliable. And there are several narrations narrated by our infallibles, alayhi salam, which define the just, the truthful, the most pious, and the trustworthy narrator. So I must, they use this method, salamu alayhi. So they derive from our imams, that our imams, they used to say, Fulan is trustworthy, Fulan is trusted, like Abdul Azim al-Hasani, like the first two naib of our 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Al-Amri wa ibnahu thiqatan. Amri and his son are two trustworthy. Whatever they tell you, they are telling on my behalf. And the Amris, they are the ones they verified, among others, the existence of 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala, and his birth, because they saw, Imam showed them. So they are our trustworthy, among those trustworthy narrators. There are 40 narrators who narrate that they saw the 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala, and it was a very secret environment. So even having these 40 narrators is like tawatur, that Imam has been born. We cannot deny it, because they say, why only 40? 40 in a very taqiyya, very secret, very fearful environment was there, that if Imam was able to disclose to 40 narrators the existence of Imam, child, that means that we have tawatur here. We have a very strong case of our 12th Imam's existence. May he come soon, inshallah, and relieve us from all these atrocities and problems we are facing. So after we said some of these criteria were mentioned. Some of the criteria of principles were mentioned when people, they say, Yabna Rasulullah, somebody's saying this, somebody's saying that. Who should we rely? So Imam will give them criteria, principles, general principles, kubras, to fix the conflict in the narrators. Okay. Now we come to the history of Ilm al-Rijal. The first author who wrote the book of Rejaal was Abdullah al-Kanani, okay? Kanani, who died in 219 Hijrah. Tell me, who lived in this time, 219 Hijrah? If our 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, was born into 55, okay? So that means this is before the occultation. Before the occultation. So that means these books were written in the time of Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, and they did not say anything. Okay. So we are going to talk more about this book, who he lived in his time. He was basically the companion of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam. So this seems to be the time of Imam Rida alayhi salam, or later. After, because he died in 219. Imam Rida alayhi salam was in 200 something, okay? So he lived in the time of Imam Rida. Imam Rida, he was martyred, I think, in 200 something. So he lived after Imam Rida. After him, scholars started to write the books of this science. So this is a very important key figure in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And the most famous contemporary work in Ilm al-Rijal was done by the great Hausa reformist, who cleared and cleaned the whole process of ijtihad. He filtered, okay, or deduction from many weak concepts and principles which were used in the process by his predecessors. And several mujtahids opposed him. but he was always strong in convincing other mujtahids by his logical approach in criticizing and providing better, strong methods of ijtihad. So that was the quality of Sayyid al-Khoi. He used to keep the philosophy aside. He used to be very mathematician type. He was very smart in mathematics. So so he used to use a lot of logic. So whenever people will come, his students will come and argue with him, and he will shun them. And he was so open to the arguments. He will allow people to come. He will allow the house of students to come and argue with him, debate with him. You see, and so those who would defeat Sayyid al-Khoi, Quddis Sirra, or will not be able to, Sayyid al-Khoi will not be able to come to a conclusion, they will get the ijaz of ijtihad. To defeat Sayyid al-Khoi was something challenge. It was the giant of the giants. Okay, so therefore, so Sayyid Sistani is one of those few who were able to have this ijaz of ijtihad from Sayyid al-Khoi. So you will have to have strong convincing power to try to influence Sayyid al-Khoi's arguments. Anyhow, so therefore, so Sayyid al-Khoi's book, he used a logical approach in ijtihad. So basically, we said that there were two great personalities in the time of Sayyid al-Khoi. One was Sayyid al-Khomeini and one was Sayyid al-Khoi. Sayyid al-Khomeini brought the reforming of Islamic political system. Sayyid al-Khoi did a reforming in the Hausa. He filtered a lot of weak concepts of that. So Sayyid al-Khoi was a revolutionary in the Hausa area, and all the theories which many of the Hausas they study, they're arguments of Sayyid al-Khoi, Quddis Sirra. And in the political era, Sayyid al-Khomeini, Quddis Sirra. So these two were great giants of that time. And they both are like the Khu, and they end with and they both were Musawis. There are a lot of resemblance in these two great personalities. And even Sayyid Sistani and Sayyid al-Khamenei, so they both are Husseini, they both are Ali, they both are like you can, from Khurasan. So you can see a lot of similarities. And this shows us that the 12th Imam somehow is giving certain directions to his followers. Okay, so anyhow, so Sayyid al-Khoi criticized many concepts and methodologies used by previous great scholars in various sciences which involve ijtihad. He had so many observations and criticisms in the methods and theories of ilm al-Rejaal too. So Sayyid al-Khoi criticized a lot of concepts of tafsir, a lot of concepts of ilm al-usul. He has these 5 mega books, like 5 mega books, like 5 books like this size, which is like about 500 pages book. Okay, it's like 5 this volumes of ilm usul al-fiqh. Remember the logical methodology, and majority of the scholars, if they want to go become mujtahid, they have to go through this. So when you open and you start to understand one line of that book, you'll get lost. If you have not studied Bahth Kharij for a couple of years, you'll get lost. Okay, so my advice is, or you might have brain tumors, or God forbid something bad might not happen to you. So step by step is very important. So that's the ilm al-usul. So in al-usul, he has theories. In Rejaal, he has theories. In hadith, he has theories. He's not an Arab. He has some observations on language, Arabic language. He's not an Arab. And it's not surprising. Sibawayh, the giant of Arabic grammar, was a Persian. Okay? So therefore, that is Sayyid al-Khoi Quddis Sirra. So he filtered a lot of theories and concepts, various sciences which involve ijtihad. He had so many observations and criticism in the methods and theories of ilm al-Rijal too. Such ended up in writing the whole encyclopedia of narratives, 23 volumes, in which he also spoke about the Kubra or the principles. So it is Sughra, but in the first volume, he has an introduction. He mentioned all these theories of Kubra, which Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Fadli rahmatullah alayh, he had taken from his book of Rejaal. So his book has 15,676 narratives. And most distinguishing thing about this book is the narrators are arranged in alphabetical order. Remember Fahrast, index? So this is the indexing of Sayyid al-Khoi. We call it Mu'jam. Mu'jam is also an encyclopedia. Okay. So Mu'jam is also like an encyclopedia. So encyclopedia of narrators of hadith. So the narrators are arranged in alphabetical order, and those who narrate from him and from, so Sayyid al-Khoi by himself is considered a narrator of hadith. He said, I narrate from the one who narrated from my teacher, who narrates from that teacher. So he is also, he links himself and some narrators to the Imams alayhi salatu wasalam. So he is by himself is a narrator of hadith, because in one of the hadith it is mentioned that in the absence, in the time of occultation, فَارْجِعُوا فِي إِلَى رُوَاتِ حَدِيثِنَا, refer in it to the narrators of hadith. So referring to the narrators of hadith, these are our mujtahideen, are narrators of hadith. Okay, so they are mujtahideen, they are narrators of hadith, they are fuqaha. So they are application of the hadith of our aimas. When they say that in the occultation you refer to them, they have given criteria. So Sayyid al-Khoi is one of those who fit the criteria. So the narrators are arranged, we said, excuse me. Dr. Abdullah, every narrator goes through a very accurate and intellectual investigational process. Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Fadli has mentioned about 50 books written in this field since the book until now, since the first book until now, since the first book until now. There are 50 books Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Fadli has mentioned. We will focus on 10 books because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have mercy on the people of the earth. I will have mercy on you. Okay, so for that I'm going to have, otherwise in Hausa you may need to memorize all these 50 books. So I'm going to ask you to memorize only 10. Qurbatan lillahi ta'ala, fi sabilillah. Okay, so memorize these 10 books, because these 10 books are going to come in the quiz, final quiz. You are going to link like we did in Al-Hadith. Whose book is this? Whose book is this? There'll be narrators, there'll be authors, and there'll be this. So now in this field, we have two definitions. Mutaqaddimin wa mutaakhirin. The early ones, the later ones. So Shaykh al-Tusi, rahmatullah alayhi, he was the giant like Sayyid al-Khoi, but before 1,000 years. He is the decisive of the previous one and the later ones. Mutaqaddimin, mutaakhirin. So these are examples of Ilm al-Rejaal, famous books of Rejaal we are going to mention. Shaykh al-Tusi and before, we call them mutaqaddimin. They depend more on narrations, narrators. Their testimonies are mostly narrations. Okay, they narrate. I heard Fulan, that Fulan was a trustworthy person. After Shaykh al-Tusi, majority of them, they use the ijtihad. Remember that chemical process I did to define. So they are ma'rifa ijtihadiyya. So let's look at these and we'll be done for today. Okay, so I have given some of the specifics of some of the books, so it will help you memorize. That's at the miscellaneous section. So the first 4 books, the early ones, are, we said, Shaykh al-Tusi and before. So there are 4 famous books, like Kutub al-Arba in the Hadith, we have Kutub al-Arba in the Rijal. The first 4 famous books, they start from Kashi, number 3. You see number 3? 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the 4 books. These names will pop up on your face throughout this course. So you'd better memorize it now before tomorrow. Okay. Most of the course is based on understanding, but these 2 slides, please memorize it as you memorize Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, or keep it beside you like a kind of what they say, cheat paper or something like that. So number 1, Abdullah al-Kanani. His name of name of his Rijal is Kitabur Rijal. Now remember, they had some of them, they had the Sughra and Kubra together. The first book written in this science, Then we have Al-Barqi, father or son. So there's a debate. Is that both were ulama in Ilm al-Rijal. So this book, Tabaqat is the main book here. Who is he? Is he for the father Barqi or the junior Barqi, son? There's a debate. This was in 280. The son was in 280. And this was in the time, he was a companion of Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam. So not the Kanani, this one. So basically, then we have Kashi, Ma'rifatun Naqilin. Remember the name and the author. One of the four famous books, scholars of Rejaal, Ma'rifatun Naqilin. This is the oldest book from the four books, because we have four early books. So there's four early books, Kutub al-Arba'a. These are famous scholars. Tabaqat means layer, tabaqa or tabaqa. I don't know have you heard about this, let me make you tabaqat. There is juice. I don't know if you drink juice. So they call it asir tabaqat. So you'll see avocado, mango, all these are called tabaqat, layers. So this tabaqa, layer, tabaqat. So anyhow, so just remember juice with the layers. This is asir tabaqat. So tabaqat means, so this is all names. It has to do how they have classified the book. So tabaqat is classified by tabaqat al-ruwat. Remember, Sayyid al-Khuwi has classified by the names, okay, alphabetical order. Tabaqat has classified by the levels, the narrators of the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, first level. Narrators of the time of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, second level. Narrators, so they are tabaqat. They are classified in the book as tabaqat. Ma'rifatun naqilin. Naqil means naql. Okay, in Urdu, they naqal karta hai, cheating. So naqal means transmitting. So the transmitters of the hadith, that means the narrators of the hadith. Ma'rifa means recognizing them, knowing them. Ad-du'afa and mamduhin. Ad-du'afa means the weak ones. This is Ibn al-Ghadair. You are going to talk more about it. This poor guy, he got a lot of curse, a lot of condemnation, just because he wanted to help. So just remember this Ghadairi, Kitab al-Du'afa, with Dad and Dad. Kitab al-Du'afa, Da'if means weak, Ghadairi. And this Ghadairi, poor guy. So what he did, he wrote a book of weak ones and he criticized them, like constructive criticism. This was, so people, how can a scholar do ghiba? He's doing ghiba and this and that. Oh my goodness, they ate him up. But he did a big favor to the science of Rejaal, because people were able to, because some of the Rejaal, they're so spiritual or funny, like I can't talk about this narrative. But you know he's a fabricator, you know. No, but it's hidden. Nobody knows. I don't want to expose this narrator with this defect which I found. It will be ghiba. Come on. So that's why Sayyid al-Khuwi in the chapter of ghiba and Sayyid Sistani says, if there was a danger, you are going to prevent a danger or correct an information which might lead to wrong consequences, that ghiba is permissible ghiba. But there are some spiritual scholars, they would not know stuff. I can't disclose him. No. So these, they bashed al-Ghadairi for disclosing them. Anyhow, poor Ghadairi. Sheikh Ahmad al-Najashi. Now Najashi was also the king of Abyssinia, but that is in the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib went to this king, and then Khalid ibn Walid also came there, Amr ibn al-As came there and gave gifts to the king. That's also called Najashi in Arabic, Abyssinian king. But this Najashi it's a title of the scholar, Sheikh Ahmad al-Najashi. This was the super of all of them in that time. He is the top in Ilm al-Rijal. The Sheikh al-Tusi is the giant, but in Ilm al-Rijal, this Najashi, Sheikh al-Najashi, rahmatullah alayh, he was specialized in it. His book is Fahrasu Asma Musannifi al-Shia. Fahras, index of the names of the authors of the Shia books. And he's one of the four famous books. Okay, and you see in the miscellaneous, these are all four famous. And then we come to Sheikh Tusi, the giant, the Hui of his time, before 1000 years. He is also buried in Najaf. Sayyid al-Hui is buried in Najaf. Their graves are close by to each other. Fahrast Abwab. His books are in Ilm al-Rijal. He has Fahrast with a T. He has Abwab, the chapters. He has Ikhtiyar. We are going to take more in detail about these names. But at this, just swallow these names and the authors like you swallow a bitter medicine. Then we have this mutaakhirin, and there's so many. So just to have mercy upon you, so that Allah will have mercy upon me, I'm going to just mention four famous ones. The Hilli bros, the Hillis, okay? Jamaluddin ibn Tawus al-Hilli. He has the book which is called Mahj al-Da'wat. All the du'as he collected. And these are the ones, Ridwanullahi alayhim, may Allah bless them. They are the ones they brought Salat Ja'far, no, not Salat Ja'far, Salat al-Raghaib from the books of Sunnis, because they said that let there be a benefit, spiritual benefit. So these are the ones they brought the hadith of Sufi on Salat al-Raghaib of the Rajab in the books of Shia. Okay, so just to relate, Hilli Raghaib. Remember this. It was not in the book of Shia. None of the Imams narrated it. Salatul Raghaib. None of the Imam has been seen performing it. Like Salat Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, Imams have been seen. Salamullah alayhi. But this, no. So Hillis, they brought this. Allam al-Hilli, the next one. He brought it. So here, Jamaluddin ibn Tawus. Tawus means peacock. So it's a Jamal, beautiful, the beauty of the religion, son of Taus, peacock. Like these are beautiful names. They might have some beauty features. Anyhow, his book is Hallul Ishkal, solving the problems. Fi Ma'rifat al-Rijal, in knowing the narrators, the hadith. Okay, he was in 7th Hijri. 7th. This is the time of the Hillis. And they were the one who broke the ice of Sheikh al-Tusi. After Sheikh al-Tusi, people would dare to become mujtahid. Anybody on mujtahid, you, who are you? Sheikh al-Tusi said so. Okay, sorry. That kind of. So these Hillis, they came and they broke that ice finally in the 7th century. Okay. The second one, Allam al-Hilli. Allam al-Hilli has book Khulasa, and he has Kashf al-Maqal. Khulasa means summary. So it's this very brief books. He summarizes the narratives. And we are going to take more information about these books later on. Kashful Maqal. The Maqalat means the statements of the scholars. He discovers them. So he collected all the work of the previous scholars and arranged it. He followed the method of Ibn Dawood al-Hilli, okay, which I did not mention here, not to keep too much. Ibn Dawood was basically the teacher of Allama. And Sheikh Abdullah al-Mamaqani, he is now the recent contemporary. Tanqih al-Maqal fi Ahwal al-Rijal. Tanqih means scrutinizing. Maqal, statements of the scholars of Rijal. Ahwal al-Rijal, who have spoken about the status of the narrators. And then we have the final book, the giant Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khoi, who Mu'jam Rejaal al-Hadith. The best written until now. Now, there are scholars that are writing, so there will be some books which are going to supersede the book of Sayyid al-Khoi, but it may take some more time. So this was for today. I don't see any questions here now, and my time is finishing because I have to start the class for Arabs after 5 minutes. So inshallah, send me your questions in emails. Thank you so much for coming. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mu'jam means encyclopedia. Encyclopedia. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Sheikh, these slides, are you going to send it?
I told you, go to our website. They're all there. You can bug Sheikh Maitham with for these things. Okay? So Sheikh Maitham will help.